Okay, the first question. Dear Ajahn, we see the Dhamma, we see the sangha. Where is the Buddha now? No, that's only the statue, obviously. That when a person becomes fully enlightened, we say that's Nirvana with something remaining. What is remaining? When the Buddha, say, became enlightened under the Bodhi tree, he still had his body, he still had his mind, he was still active for another 45 years until he eventually just passed away. And why didn't he just pass away straight away? And it was because that he had, for want of a better word, a mission. And his mission, and he says this, it's very clearly said, that this fellow Mara comes along and said, just teaching people is just too tiring, it's just too much of a drain, and people won't understand anyway, it's too deep a teaching. And the Buddha replied, no, I'm not going to just disappear straight away, and I won't go into the full Nibbana, which is called Parinibana, until there are plenty of enlightened monks in the sangha, until there are plenty of enlightened nuns in the bhikkhuni sangha, until there are plenty of really great practicing lay men and lay women. And he said that's the mission. And then 3 months before he passed away, that Mara came up to him, and this was in the Alawa shrine in Vaisali, and said to the Buddha, look, you're really old now, in his 80th year, and there are lots and lots of enlightened monks, and lots of enlightened nuns, and lots of great lay women and lay men followers. You fulfilled the task. Your promise has been achieved. It's now the time to pass away. And the Buddha said, yeah, that's true. So he said, in 3 months' time, I will pass away at Kusinara. And so that was the end of his existence. And when the Buddha passed away, there was nothing left. And you say, well, where does a Buddha go when he's passed away? And the answer was given before the Buddha passed away to this wanderer called, what was it again? Vachagota. That was his name. And it became known as the story was the Agi Vachagota Sutta. And so it was on about fire. And I'm going to change it a little bit. No, I'm not going to just say it totally accurately, because sometimes people think, oh, maybe I'm changing important details. But the only details I was going to change was, instead of like a grass fire or wood fire, I was just saying like an oil lamp, the flame of that. But anyway, the Buddha said to Vachagota, suppose there was a fire burning in front of you. If it was a wood fire, a grass fire, would you know what type of fire it is? He said, yeah, sure. And suppose that one day the fire, the wood or the grass or, say, the paper was all consumed up, so there's nothing more to burn. Or that the wind blew the fire out. Then, where would the fire go? Where does the fire go when it's blown out? Or there's no fuel to make it burn? Where does it go? It doesn't go anywhere. All that flame was a combination of causes. The fuel and the heat, and what you might say oxygen as well. And those 3 things caused the fire to burn. And one of those 3 things stops. When the causes stop, then the flame stops. As simple as that. With an oil lamp, the 3 causes for the flame are the wick, the heat, and the oil. Any one of those three things is exhausted, and then the flame stops. It doesn't go anywhere. It was just an effect of three causes. He said that is the same as a human being. Once the Buddha becomes enlightened, it's almost like the journey through samsara is terminal. This is their last life. They haven't become sort of extinguished yet. But when they pass away, and for the Buddha that was a kusanara, then all the causes for his existence or being were exhausted. And he Parinibanaed. And the word for that, Parinibanaed, is the same word they use for a flame going out. It's just like we say in the Ratana Sutra. I just mentioned this the other day to someone last night about chanting. Some of those chants have got some amazing sort of statements in them. Nibbante dira yatayang padipo. They will nibbana, just like this flame of the oil lamp. But eventually it will just go out, it will nibbuta. That's one of the wonderful things about learning the language of Pali. He actually saw that these were words which were used in ordinary life. To Johnny, just like the candle's gone out, the candle's nibbanaed. And that's what they would say. And it was just ordinary use of that word, which means that it's gone. And that's why they say, aparisesa nibbana, nibbana with nothing remaining. Disappeared, gone. The process ended. The causes have stopped, and then the effect stops. They say, well, what about all the other people still needed to be taught? The Buddha would not enter Parinibana until there was many other enlightened monks and nuns around teaching, and they would carry on, just pushing the wheel of Dhamma, which was now unstoppable. So it's other people carry on the task. And then when they pass away, they've made many other disciples and they carry on the task. And there's always plenty of enlightened monks and nuns around to teach, believe it or not. So that's how the Buddhism has kept on going through so many centuries. It's not just one teacher, not just the Buddha. The Buddha gets the wheel rolling, and everybody else helps along that wheel, keeps on pushing it once they become enlightened. And the other part of that story, which is important, if you read that, it's there in the sutras, it's very clear. It just makes it very obvious that the Buddha's purpose for actually teaching was to create not just monks, but bhikkhunis. That was a mission, and the Buddha wouldn't stop his teaching until that you were well established. So that's one of the reasons when I see things like that, I thought that creating a bhikkhuni sangha, fully ordained nuns, is way down the Buddha's main purpose of teaching. So why not? And of course, we've done it in Perth. Other places are much slower than Perth, but we really got it going. And well done, we have got some bhikkhunis here. See what wonderful people they are, what wonderful teachers they are. They just, it takes a while to become a really great teacher, but they're getting there. But anyway, as far as where the Buddha's gone, he's gone. Doesn't exist anymore. It's finished. In other words, he was true to what he taught others. Otherwise, if the Buddha carried on, he'd be a hypocrite. Disappears, gone forever. but the teachings, the Dhamma and the Sangha remain. And then eventually, of course, from one Buddha we get many other Buddhas. I've taught this before. Actually, the last time I taught this was in a Zoom retreat, which was done for Singapore and Malaysia and Hong Kong. And there I just mentioned that even Gautama the Buddha, our Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, before he became the Buddha, even he said he was walking with his Ananda and he smiled at a place. And Ananda said, "What do you smile for?" Because that was very rare. And then the Buddha said, "Oh, this was a place in a previous life that I was a monk." The Buddha says, in a previous life I was a monk under the Buddha Kassapa. And he tells a story that in his previous life, this is in the Gatikara Sutta. Anyone wants to have a look that up, Gatikara Sutta. I could actually put it out tomorrow. It's in the Majjhima Nikaya, but Gatikara was a disciple of the previous Buddha, Kassapa, a long, long time ago. And his chief, Gatikara was supposed to be the main disciple, the chief disciple of the Buddha Kassapa. And Gatikara was a very poor man. He was a potter. The only reason he didn't become a monk himself was Gatikara had two parents. Obviously, he had two parents, but his two parents were blind. So he had to look after them. If he ordained, then no one to look after his mum and dad. So he had a job as a potter, but whenever he got any clay to make his pots, he would never dig the earth himself in case he killed any little animals in the earth. He would only make sure that he got leftovers from like rabbits who were digging holes, or from people who were making their dikes on their paddy fields, and any leftover clay, he would take that, and he would make pots, and he would not sell the pots. He would just put the pots outside his workshop. These are pots. If anybody wants one, please take them. If you want to leave some rice and some lentils or something, to feed my family, then please do so. And that's how he lived. He was just so pure, nothing to do with money. But he had a friend. This Gatikara had a friend called Jotipala. And Gatikara was a devout disciple of the Buddha Kassapa. And Jotipala wasn't interested in all this religious nonsense. And every time that Gatikara asked his friend Jotipala, "Let's come and see the Buddha Kassapa," he said, "No, who wants to see those shaven-headed good-for-nothings?" He actually criticized Kassapa and put him down. And 3 times, we always do things 3 times in Buddhism, 3 times the Gatikara tried to get his friend to come and see the Buddha, and he refused. And then, he invited him to let's go and bathe in the river. So they went bathing in the river, and then when they came out, the Gatikara took hold of his friend's hair and started pulling it. "Let's go and see the Buddha Kassapa." And many of you, if you have known the Asian tradition, touching the hair, that's a really big no-no. The hair is the head and the hair is very high. So you can't just grab Ajahn Brahm by the hair, or anybody you respect as a teacher. That's really a no-no. And Jotipala said, "You go so far as to grab me by the hair, that's really an insult. This Buddha Kassapa must be something very important to you." He said, "Yes, just come and see." So Jotipala went to see the Buddha Kassapa. And he was so inspired when he actually saw a Buddha, the previous Buddha Kassapa, that he decided to ordain as a monk himself. And when the Buddha Gautama told that story to Ananda, he said, "I was Jotipala. That's one of my previous lives." That's how we make Buddhas. Sometimes they come and see a Buddha, they don't even recognize what they're seeing or what they're hearing about, but eventually they see it, get inspired, ordained, and then they must have got something, some inspiration, some teaching. When you've got that great quality mind, you're going to be a Buddha in the next generation, and got reborn in this realm. I know that people are in many countries, even say in Thailand, they have these 10 Jataka tales, which are just Dasa Jataka, which are totally not sort of true to the original teachings of the Buddha. And some of those stories, they can be quite gross. This Vaisantara, that he gave his children away, knowing they'll be abused. That's parental neglect. He'd go to prison for something like that if he did it today. When he did that, because it was like learning how to let go. It wasn't real. But anyway, the real Buddha story in the previous life, he was a monk under Kassapa the Buddha. He would have remembered so much and gained so much in meditation and wisdom under Kassapa and brought that into this life. And anyway, they've got the question here, why were all historical Buddhas born in India with metta? Of course they weren't. There was only just 2 of them. There's been many, many Buddhas over many eons of existence. Not just one eon. I was a theoretical physicist. And just sometimes, there is this sutta which it says that the next level of existence, the next plane of existence above this realm, that the heavenly beings there, 200 years is their lifespan, and every day is like 100 years or something of human life. I got the numbers wrong. And then the next realm is 4 times as long as that, and the next realm is another 4 times as long as that. And then you can work it out for all the heavenly realms, and then to the realm of Brahma, the Brahmaloka. And in Brahmaloka, you don't have to worry about if this is true or not, but nevertheless, it says, and Brahmaloka lasts a whole eon. I thought, wow, now I can work out how long an eon is, according to Buddhism. And I remember just simple calculation, and it worked out about 37,000 million years. And according to theoretical physics, or astrophysics, we're now about, I think, 13.7 thousand million years since the Big Bang. Oh, wow, that's in the ballpark. But this is not just one eon of existence. There are many eons of existence. If it can happen once, it can happen many times, and of course it does. And even good old Stephen Hawking used to say that. He said he envisages a universe without any boundaries in time or space. You have one universe, one Big Bang, another Big Bang. Has to happen. So there's been many eons of existence. Not even planet Earth. The previous Buddhas, eons ago. I'm really talking eons, okay, before the Big Bang. Other universes would have developed, other solar systems, other planets. So do Buddhism believe in aliens? Of course. I remember going to Heathrow once and arriving there. They had actually a channel. They said, EU citizens, GB citizens, and aliens. It just meant people from other countries, that's all. But anyway, I think I was just talking every week. I was contact Venerable Chanda, and she was saying that, in India, there's something about, there's a few Indian people here, it's wonderful people. He was just saying that when she was staying in India many years ago, what can be done? And one of the Indians said, well, you're a white nun, but everything is possible in India, ma'am. Well, she liked that, just as the openness there and the respect for religious seekers. It was wonderful. Dear Ajahn, what are the requirements to be a monk and nun in your monastery, in Parinibana monastery, Dhammasara monastery? Thanks. Just basically the requirements are you want to be a monk or a nun, and you're really inspired and you can actually do it. So sometimes, years and years ago, I was always looking for monks or nuns who could, really powerful people. One of the most impressive people who actually came to Parinibana monastery years ago, he was a Israeli citizen, dual nationality, Israeli and US, and he had, tenure at the Jewish university. In other words, a brilliant fellow. And he was, he was a Buddhist, and he said, I want to be a Buddhist monk. And I said, oh no, it's too difficult for you. He said, no, I really want to. I really made it tough for him. And because he's a brilliant person. When you got tenure in the university, that means you can keep on sort of teaching there for your whole life. It's a very well-known university. And anyway, that he arrived at Parinibana monastery. I remember just meeting him in the afternoon, and then he was sat down. I said, I'll get your room for you. And then he had a telephone call on his mobile. His father had had an accident in New York and was critically ill. He said, I just got to go back. I never even showed him his hut. He was there for 3 or 4 hours. He booked a flight. He just arrived from New York with a few stopovers. And now he had to go back again. I never saw him again. And I thought he came so close to becoming a monk, but things weren't supposed to be. I don't know, but his karma was not that strong. And so off he went to look after his mum and dad. Anyway, and other times, there was this other monk. This is not here, this was over in Thailand. He had just finished a degree, I think, in London University, and he knew a friend of a friend who was arranging for horses to be transported from London to Singapore for horse racing. And if you managed to actually get a slot as one of the grooms, then he got a free flight over into Singapore. He just finished his degree, and he thought he'd just go over to Singapore and then just slowly come back again. A bit of an adventure after graduating from university. He wasn't a Buddhist at all, he was just a young man, finished in university. And so from Singapore, he made his way up through Malaysia and then into Thailand, into Bangkok. When he got to Bangkok, he met a couple of people who were working for, I think one of the children's charities. Oh, was it children's charity? Well, one of the British charities who were looking after a refugee camp in the northeast of Thailand, outside the town of Ubon. And these doctors and nurses, he met them and they said, why don't you come up and stay with us for a while in Ubon, in the refugee camp. So, adventure. Off he went up to the northeast of Thailand. And when he was in the refugee camp, helping the doctor and the nurse for this charity, he got very bored. There's nothing up there. And he said, well, what else is up here? And he said, there's a monastery with some Western monks close by. And so he came up to that monastery just to have a look. And he asked the abbot at the time, is it okay if I just stay overnight? He said, yes, why not? So he stayed overnight, and in the morning, he shaved his own hair off, went up to the abbot and asked to be a monk. Absolutely crazy. He didn't know anything about Buddhism. He is now the abbot of Amawati Monastery. Ajahn Brahm. And it was absolutely crazy. He became a really good monk. And just that fell into it. It was really weird. And also for him, his name, because I did the visas for all these monks, his name, because I had to get all the details, his name was Jeremy Horner. I thought, Horner? That rings a bell, because there was this Professor I.B. Horner, Irene Horner, at Cambridge University. She was the head of the Pali Text Society. She did all these translations, from Pali into English for the Pali Text Society. I said, do you know her? She money of her? No, I never heard of her. And so, but anyway, sort of when he went, after about 3 or 4 years as a monk in Thailand, he told me that his father had had a heart attack, so he had to go back to England to see his father. So off he went. And he also told me that when he was in England, he just asked his dad, he said, Professor Irene Horner? And his father just froze. Oh, her. She's your auntie. She's my sister. We never talk about her. Because she was weird. She never got married. She was a professor at Cambridge. She didn't actually fit into the family. And so even the son never knew that his auntie was actually a famous Buddhist over in England. Eventually they met, just very briefly, just before she passed away. Really weird stories. But anyway, that's good old Ajahn Brahm. His nickname, I don't mind saying this, his nickname in Thailand was axle grease. Because Ajahn Chah could never pronounce Jeremy, so it was Jerabi. Jerabi was a Thai word for axle grease. So that became his name. Axle grease, come over here. One of the other monks, he was a Japanese monk, Shibahashi. No Japanese name? Was it Shibahashi? You know what Ajahn Chah called him? He couldn't pronounce Shibahashi. It was Sibat Hasip. You're laughing your head off. Quite. Sibat Hasip was like $4.50. So we had a lot of good fun in those days. Anyway, the requirements to be a monk or nun in your monastery, you just turn up, you shave your own hair off, and just see what happens next. Because I confess to you, quite honestly, that I can't tell. That some people who become monks, you think, oh, this is a really great candidate. They make a really good job. And they don't. And some others is a hopeless case. They probably only last a week. And they become sort of abbots of monasteries. Anyway, dear Ajahn, how long does one need to watch the breath before it becomes beautiful? Thank you. Not long. Where does the beauty come from? The breath isn't beautiful. It is actually the peace and the stillness of the mind. It's what you add onto it. You're adding onto that, you see everything beautiful. How long does the floor need to be there until you find it beautiful? How long does the sky need to just be there before you can look at it and really admire it and appreciate it? After a while, when you meditate, the hindrances disappear, and the mind has just got so much energy and joy, everything looks beautiful. And that's, it's a sign that your mindfulness is getting very strong. And that's one of the reasons just why that clump of bamboo story. They were just seeing the most beautiful clump of bamboo in the world, but then after a few days went back there and it was just ordinary again. I mean, it was weird. And it wasn't taking any... I told you that story, didn't I? Early on. But it was weird because where did that beauty come from? Shall I tell the really gross story? Okay, here's a really gross story, but absolutely true. That it actually makes it very clear what is beauty. Where does it come from? Sitting in here, I've been teaching meditation retreats in here, obviously ever since the place was built. So at one time, just teaching and meditating in the afternoon in here, not just the hot weather. meditating here, and then you had to go to the toilet, like anybody else, to do a number 2. You know what number 2 is? And it was the middle room in the monks, not the monks, in the men's toilets, just on that little gangway opposite the laundry. And so I went in there, did my business, but I was just so peaceful, so joyful, so much happiness in the mind. It's obvious, sometimes you see people just walking down, they've got a silly smile on their face. That was me. And then I made a mistake. My mistake, my error, was to look in the bowl before I flushed it. Wow. Because honestly, in all my life, I've never seen such a beautiful piece of feces. It wasn't ordinary. It was. Have a look next time you go into the toilet. What you put in there. There's not just one colour brown. It's all different shades of brown, and just the way those shades interact. It was like a work of art. Like it was like painted by like a Picasso or something, I don't know. And just the way that those little balls were all put together like a sculpture by Rodin or Michelangelo, I don't know again. But it was beautiful. And then I was looking at it, and then the aroma. It was like, some of the scents which people put on their bodies, they're just so fake. Even some of the scents which you have in the stuff they give you to wash your body with. It's just so superficial. This is real, this is deep, this is of the earth. And I was really getting into it. And it was only, I say, the training which I've had in my life to let things go. It was tough, it was a hard one. Press the button on the top. No, I can't do it. The most beautiful thing which you've come out of your backside for years. How can you let this go? How can you abandon this, renounce it? But I did it. I pressed the button. No, I can't do it. No, I did. I pressed it, and it went out of my life forever. Oh, what a loss, what a tragedy. Okay, a bit exaggeration at the end there, but the middle of the story was totally accurate. I was so surprised that even a piece of, call it what it is, shit, looks so beautiful. And that really shocked me. And of course, I'm not a crazy man, but it was, if that can look beautiful, it certainly doesn't come, from the object itself. It's what the mind adds onto it. So where does the beautiful breath come from? If a piece of shit can look so amazing, your breath, it's really easy to make it look just some beautiful, wonderful, pure, incredible thing. And of course, when that happens, which it does, in the sutras, in the Anapanasati Sutta, that is when you're breathing in, breathing out, you develop piti and sukha, the joy and happiness. This is an amazing path. When everything gets happier and more beautiful and more wonderful. Also, you keep your precepts because you manage to raise the general level of happiness in your life, and you do your sort of charity and you're kind to other people. Charity is not just giving money. Charity is giving, like I said the other day, I gave Ajahn, I said this to Ayachanda. It was a really hot day yesterday, and so I was over in Parinibana monastery, and somebody gave me this big bowl of ice cream. And then Ajahn Brahm had some ice cream too. I was sitting next to him. And I said to him, after he'd eaten his bowl of ice cream, how was it? So, that's really delicious. He'd been working hard in the forest up the top there all morning. And he said, really enjoyed his ice cream. Have mine as well. And I gave him my ice cream as well. Just that giving was just, I really enjoyed that. I got more out of the ice cream from giving it to him than eating it myself. It's always the case. When you're letting go, caring for others, there's a great source of happiness. He ate it. And I didn't miss a bit of it. I was happy. So little by little, this is how you create happiness in your life. So your level of happiness is going up. And then afterwards, then everything looks so beautiful. You get deep meditations, everything's wonderful. And you see beauty where you never expected it. The contents of a toilet bowl. That is profound insight, believe it or not. Sometimes we can see so much negativity in our life. COVID. Disappointments, you've got sicknesses, cancers. These are real COVID symptoms and cancers and stuff. But sometimes you can change your perception of them. You may find a bit sort of radical, but see them as beautiful. Why not? They're there. Change your perception. And then see what happens. But anyway, then after a while you watch the breath. It doesn't matter about how long, how deeply you watch it. And it becomes gorgeous. Ooh. Dear Ajahn, letting what is arising be isn't easy for me. Although I know that instruction, yet I often identify with the thoughts or emotions that emerge in my mind. How to unhook from this habit? Thank you very much. Letting what is arising be. No, don't let what is arising be. What has already arisen, let it be. It's already here. You've got no choice, have you? It's already come up. What is arising? You don't know what is arising yet. It's just coming into existence. It hasn't come yet. So let what is already here be. Arising, passing away. What is here? That's where you can find peace. And anyway, the emotions that emerge in my mind. The emotions are one of the most important things to be aware of. Stuff like physical feelings like pain or pleasure or something, but the emotions, how do you react to that? Because how you react, that's the most important point. You cannot change like aches and pains, heat or cold. It's a really hot day today, 42 degrees I found out. So it's really hot, but it comes and it goes. And anyway, it's going to probably get hotter than that. I guarantee this is not the hottest day you're going to experience. When you get cremated, that's going to be really hot. You don't feel anything, so you're fine. So, for the emotions, how do you react to things? Sometimes we used to say like, it's like you got life, you got disappointment, beginning of a retreat, end of a retreat, sickness, death, or gain and praise and whatever. What's between you and those objects? How do you regard those things? If you regard those things, they come and they go. Like praise. How many times have you been praised and you didn't deserve it? Come on, be honest. A lot of times. How many times should you have been criticized but you weren't? Many times. Sometimes I don't know, because sometimes you're just so kind to me and so respectful, I don't know what you're doing. Whether you like it, you don't like it. Oh, it was a wonderful talk, Ajahn Brahm, wonderful talk. That's just so you can get away quickly. But there was this prisoner over in Karnet many years ago. And he'd obviously been in and out of jail many times. You can see there was this, one of those hardened criminals, not really hardened criminals, but he's always getting into trouble. But anyway, he came to see him. He asked, "Can I speak to you privately?" I said, "Yeah, what is it?" He said, "Look, I've been put in jail for a crime I never did. I didn't do that robbery. I know many other people would say the same things to you, but I've been coming to your class. I'm honest with you, Ajahn Brahm. I did not do that robbery." And I believed him. It was actually true. He was telling the truth. What I was thinking of, who I knew could, just pick up his case and get him released. When I was thinking about that, he broke my concentration by smiling, this really cheeky, you only say naughty smile. He said, but Ajahn Brahm, I didn't do that robbery, but I did so many other robberies where I wasn't caught. I guess this is karma. And that's true, isn't it? How many times do you really get upset that you get caught by the police camera going too fast or something? How many times have you not been caught by the police camera when you deserve to be? It's fair. So little by little you sort of understand, little by little, how, where did that come from? Like just seeing what comes into being and goes into being. You don't get too upset by praise and blame. Sometimes you get praised for things you never did. You get blamed for things you don't deserve to be blamed for. And such is life. But little by little, that what arises, what passes away, just what is actually there. And see if your emotions can be more at ease with these things, like that prisoner incarnate. He said, oh yeah, I'm not going to get angry at this, I didn't do that crime, that's for sure. But it's other things I did, so I guess it's balanced out. So the thoughts and emotions, the emotions which come from the mind, that is one of the best places. But are you supposed to get rid of all emotions to become enlightened? I remember one of the one of the Burmese monks I went to see. His name was Tadpole Sayadaw. And I went to see him to ask him questions. He was just sitting there. It's almost like with no emotions at all. And you asked him a question and he'd give an answer. He was just almost like robotic. And actually but apparently that if you could sneak up to him when he's in his own room, then that's when he does laugh. He was actually putting on almost like what a monk is supposed to look like. But these days, even in Ajahn Chah, he taught me, he said, if you go to Japan to teach, you've got to sit up very strictly. And if you go to Korea to teach, you can talk like this to ordinary people. But then you must say, this is how you meditate, like this. And it's true, because I remember just going to South Korea and having an interview on TV, and I was just talking to the interviewer. Apparently he was quite well known. We're just talking, chatting together. But then it's, okay, you're on air now. Today, we are very lucky to have Ajahn Brahm come. It's a total different way of actually sort of talking. But they had to do it because that's on TV. That's what Ajahn Chah would say. And if you go to the United States, you got to laugh and just smile a lot. There's different ways of communicating with different cultures. And Ajahn Chah was great about that. We went to England. I asked him, I said, when you went to England, Ajahn Chah, did you learn any English? He said, oh yeah. What words did you learn? I said, only one. This he said it only one in Thai. What word was that? Cup of tea. That's what he said. We just laughed our heads off after he said that. The only English word he learned, cup of tea. Anyway, free from drowsiness. How to push on through drowsiness. Oh, don't push on. Pushing is just too violent for Buddhism. Be kind. Understand drowsiness. Learn from it. After a while, I was drowsy this morning. It was really hot. So I didn't sleep well last night because it was hot. And so that causes sleepiness. Welcome to cause and effect. You don't own your body. You want to sort of control it and just make it not sleepy. You just become more sleepy that way. More tight, more tense. Instead, understand it's cause and effect, not me, not mine, it's not my problem. Other people's problems. So little by little you make peace with yourself. You understand? Never push through things. When, again, a young monk in Thailand, used to get, I said I was usually the second sleepiest monk. And then I tried everything to overcome it. But then what really worked, I found out that I did have effort. I had a huge amount of effort. And I struggle with it, and sometimes you break through the sleepiness, just through sheer willpower. But after I broke through the sleepiness, I couldn't stop thinking. I was restless. So I calmed down the restlessness, I calmed down the thinking, calm. And I was sleepy again. Have you ever noticed that? Sleepiness, you've pushed through it, through willpower you get restlessness. You calm down restlessness, you get sleepiness. So what do? When you're sleepy, you have a little bit of mindfulness, but not much. At least you know you're sleepy. And little by little, don't fight it, preserve your energies. And when you don't do anything, you don't think this is a great personal fault or tragedy. You just know it, accept it, make peace with it. Open the door of your heart to it, let it be. And then you find the energy gets greater and greater. You're more and more mindful, more and more clear, until you get so clear that the sleepiness is gone. The mind is waking up. And when that happens, you find you don't have restlessness. You have a very clear mind. Started off being sleepy, but then it becomes clear. And I know that so well that these days, if you have a restless mind, that's much worse than having a sleepy mind. Sleepy mind, you just stay with it, be with it. It goes by itself after a little while, as long as you don't overreact to it. The restless mind is just much more difficult to calm down. Here in the West, we've got many, actually all over the place these days now, many more restless minds, not enough sleepy minds. Anyway, how to train oneself to stay up all night to meditate on full moon night. Well, I'm too tired to meditate tonight. How to get over that? Don't even think about it. You just sit out there and you're enjoying yourself. If you're enjoying it, of course. And you don't have to have any fear. That really helps, because if you try to sit up on a full moon night and tomorrow you have to go to work, or you have to sort of drive people around, you're driving an aircraft, please don't do that. Stay up all night if you're going to drive an aircraft the next day. Christ, it's really dangerous. But, if you've got nothing to do the next day, you can just catch up on some sleep afterwards. And sometimes you're in the right mood. You look at your mind and say, yeah, I'm in for this, up to this. You can stay up to really lay and have some wonderful meditations. That can be done too. But don't force it. What are you trying to prove by staying up all night? If it works, great. If you feel energy, enjoy it. It's a wonderful meditation. I've had some wonderful meditations on full moon nights, all night. And so it's great. But sometimes you've got to be very careful. Because this is my holy water story. So, we have holy water in Parinibana monastery, sprinkle people with holy water for good luck. This was on one of those nights, staying up all night on the full moon night over in Thailand. And I was staying up all night, and in the morning time, good meditation, bad meditation, I forget which it was that evening. But anyway, in the morning time, you got up and, you have to go to the toilet to evacuate your bladder. And this was like in forest monasteries. And so forest monasteries, there's lots of places where you could urinate in the bush. Now there's two things to know, that it was light now, the sun had come up, but it wasn't like full light yet, so it was still a bit sort of dull on the grounds. And number two, I'd been meditating all night, so I was a bit tired. So my mindfulness wasn't strong, the light wasn't strong. And in those days, you'd urinate in the Asian way, just squatting down. You didn't stand up to urinate, you squatted down to urinate. So I squatted, on my haunches, and then I was urinating on what I thought was a stick. And then the stick It was a snake, a dangerous snake. I was peeing on a snake. This was early morning, so I couldn't really see it that well at first until it started moving. And it's also, my mindfulness wasn't that strong. But I must admit, I wasn't scared at all. I said, this is interesting. And that snake never bit me or anything. Actually, it started moving more slowly. Because it realized it was being blessed with holy water. Straight from a monk, and it was still warm. It was almost like saying thank you. It's very rare that you can give a blessing like that to a snake. I better not go there anymore. What do you think about other spiritual practices and wisdom, such as Celtic paganism, South American shamanism, even witchcraft, the good kind, obviously, as I'm talking, Aboriginal knowledge coexisting within oneself as a Buddhist? If it works, make use of it. So already sort of the spiritual practice of theoretical physics. Is that spiritual? It blows your mind sometimes. It's just, wow, amazing stuff. And even just like watching the stars at night. Is that astronomy or is that spiritualism? Other spiritual practices. What about mediums? Is that going too far? And I would actually say no, because it was one of my family stories. I asked my mother this so many times when she was still alive. Did this really happen? The story was that my mother, she was a single child from my maternal grandparents. She had a cousin, but they grew up as sisters in UK during the Second World War. That's when they grew up. And so they became young women at the end of the Second World War. Because they were so close together, they were like sisters. And so when one evening, they decided nothing better to do, didn't have much room for entertainment after the Second World War in London, they went to one of these mediums. And the medium took one look at my Opal, my auntie, her name was Opal, one look at her and said, "You're soon to meet your husband." "Oh, yeah, sure. And your husband's name will be Donald, surname Wolfries." And that's not, if it was like John Smith or something, fair enough, that was just maybe just luck. Donald Wolfries. And so about 10 days later, they went to a dance. My mother was with her. A nice young man came up and said, "Would you like to dance?" And so my auntie danced with him. "What's your name?" "Oh, my name's Opal. What's your name?" "Donald." "Donald what?" "Wolfries." And they married, and they were over 60 years married. He only died a couple of years ago. She's in her 90s, she's still alive. I said, "Is that true? Did you know him before?" I said, "I didn't know he existed. It's a really weird name, Wolfries." But they got married and they lived together for ages. That's weird. That's the only time I've known that. But be very careful, because sometimes, you go to some of these mediums and they give the wrong advice. Sometimes they say, "Oh, you're going to be really, really, really sick, and big tragedy is going to happen." And an hour later, the medium's brother turns up with an insurance policy. It's a great way of getting people to sign up for insurance. Total scam. But that was really my family. So, but the point is, make sure you keep your brain when you go even to any Buddhist stuff or any spiritual practices. Make sure it's something which, how can you really know if this is the true thing? Obviously, if you get into deep meditation and your hindrances are gone, then it's very clear what is true or not, and exactly just who you can trust. Teachers, be very careful of teachers, like me. I'm a teacher. But, check me out, first of all. That's one of the reasons why it's very helpful as Buddhist monks and nuns, we don't accept money. So you can't give me any money. I've got no personal cash. So that really helps keep the purity, because you can't do anything. And it's also just check. All those years I've been teaching in the BSWA. Now, have I just exploited anyone or abused anybody? Check me out first of all. Check out all teachers. And there's something inside of you know that this is the right way of doing things. This is the wrong way of doing things. So you should really check out your teachers, first of all, before committing. Because otherwise, people have a lot of faith. And sometimes people abuse that faith. But, I'm really open with what I have and what I do. And that's why my bedroom, basically my cave, I don't know, have you been over there yet? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And just if you go over to Bodhi Island Monastery, have a look how I live. And I haven't cleaned it up at all, it's just the way it always is. And so that gives a piece of confidence there that you're not accumulating wealth or power, and just you're open so people can see what you do. Anyway, better carry on. May we know a little bit about this bhikkhuni, not bikini. Please write properly. You're on this retreat with us, please, with metta. Yeah, it'd be great. There's one of the last days or something we can ask you to say a little bit about yourselves. What about you? Do you want to say anything yet about who you are? Oh, that's amazing what you said, but I couldn't hear it. Okay. But later on, please ask that, because it really is important for people actually to know sort of who you are. And actually, somebody at the BBC used to say that your local monasteries are like your football teams. You really support them. And he's so proud. This is our bhikkhunis. Yay! This is our monks. Yay! And people get to know them. I shouldn't say it's because of COVID. If it's okay, a week today, we're having an ordination of 2 of the novices are becoming monks. And they say, well, you've seen it before, what's the big deal? But if you do see it, it's actually inspiring. Because you've seen those ever since they were small. It's Kalama and Vimoka are both becoming bhikkhus in a week's time. Vimoka was obviously, he was training under Ajahn Santuti over in Kelmscott. And actually you see these and say, well, is this a person becoming a monk or a nun? It's not like that. You go there and, wow, I've known this young man for a long time. And you see him becoming a monk and nun, yeah, best of luck, you go for it. And then eventually they become teachers like Santuti. So, wow, you're a teacher now, and a good one. And it gives you so much happiness. It's like, they're my monks. It's like, my team, yay. And people really feel that way, and they get a lot of energy out of that. So that's why we try and make it open for people. Anyway, to Ajahn Brahm, there are no neutral thoughts. Thoughts are not big or small, powerful or weak, but merely true or false. The true extending their likeness, the false theirs. Hence, idle thoughts is a contradictory concept. All thoughts have an effect. What are your thoughts on this? Neutral. There is like a word which the Buddha made for thoughts. It's called papancha. Papancha means just they proliferate. And that's one of the reasons why, there was these 2 monks having an argument some years ago. One was saying that reincarnation, rebirth is really important. That's a fundamental part of the Buddha's teachings. So you've got to really understand rebirth, reincarnation. The other monk said, this is all about in the present moment. You can't know for sure what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. It's all about present moment, being here right now. And all that stuff, reincarnation, that just takes you off into fantasies. They had an argument. So one of them said, okay, I'm going to ask the Ajahn, the teacher. So I went into the teacher's room and said, look, reincarnation is really important. You know, it's part of the Buddha's teachings. You've got to accept that. And the teacher, the Ajahn, said, yeah, you're right. And then the monk went out, self-satisfied, told out that the teacher said I was right. He couldn't have said you were right. So the other monk went in there by himself and asked the teacher again. He said, look, it's all about present moment awareness. You know, the past, the future is just fantasies. You don't know what's true of the past and future, so it's all about the present moment. Reincarnation is not important. And the head monk said, yeah, you're right. And so the second monk went out and said, the teacher said I was right. But he said I was right. So they both went in there together. And they said what had happened. You said I was right. And then you said this other monk was right. We can't both be right. And the head monk said, yeah, that's right. I kind of like that story. They can't both be right. End of argument. I'm not going to take it further. When the retreat is finished, that's in the future. Be in the present moment. Isn't that right? Okay. Would you recommend to stop playing musical instruments or reduce the playing time? Thank you. It really depends. If that's your livelihood, then of course you've got to play your musical instruments. It's your livelihood. Keep yourself alive, get some food. Depends actually what type of musical instrument. Now, what type of musical instrument did I used to play when I was young? I used to play gramophone record player. I was too lazy to learn how to play things myself, so I just would get some music from outside. So I reduce the playing time. Find out what's best for you. And what are actually you playing? What music do you play? Is it really good music, uplifting music? Or is it sort of death metal, gangster rap? Or I don't know what people play. But, you know, sometimes it can be uplifting. And I say that because at the Buddha's cremation in Kusinara, it says so, it's in the Parinibana Sutta, the lay people at Kusinara, they offered music and dancing as their gift to the Buddha. When I heard that, I thought, dancing and music, was that allowed? And it was their offering. Obviously the monks disappeared and did their meditating. But no, for the lay community, if that's what you need to do, that's what you do. That's one of the reasons why, if you come to our Katina days, you see we often have either Kandyan dancers, Sri Lankan culture is dancing, it was traditional, or we have the Thais doing their dancing. Is that against the rules? It was offered in the time of the Buddha. And I often get that out and show people. And it's not sensuous. You see, just the age of the Thai people, should I say that? They're doing the dancing. You have a bit of fun and enjoyment just offering stuff and the Kandyan dancers. But anyway, stop playing it's not my recommendation, it's for you to make sure you live a peaceful life, and how you live that peaceful life is very much up to you. What is love? There are 3 types of love. If I remember that talk I gave years ago. First of all is the romantic love, which wants to own something attached to it. That's not really a great type of love. There is the love which we call loving kindness, metta, which is a more like giving love to other people. And of course, there is the greatest type of love, which is the tennis love. 0, nothing, emptiness, freedom. Which type of love would you like? The first type of love, the romantic love, is pretty much false. You ask people who fall in love, what are you falling in love with? You're falling in love with a fantasy, with a dream. What about the second type of love, loving kindness? That is, what I told you, that I did a marriage ceremony on Saturday, and that always remember that when you're a married person, you never think of yourself, you never think of your partner. I don't know why people in love always think of their partner. But you never think of your partner once you're married. Once you're married, you only think of us. And there's a lot of letting go there in a sort of a true relationship. You let go of what you want, your idea of yourself, to the bigger picture of us. But even more than that, I always say the greatest act of love is to let somebody go. I told that story about Steve and Jenny. When he was really dying, he just wouldn't die until she went up to him and said, I now give you permission to die. I love you so much. I don't want to see you suffer anymore. Just go. You have my permission. And it's such a beautiful memory to see that happen. And he died that evening. That is real love, to let somebody go, to be free. And of course, the best is the zero. Nothing. Free. I'm a 70-year-old man now, but I still remember that one of the scariest moments of my life, probably the time I've been the most scared, honestly, was I was still a student, I think the second year at Cambridge. One of my friends got married. And just, what young men are like, young women are like when they go to a marriage. Afterwards, with my mates, we were all hanging around, chatting, saying stupid stuff. And we got onto the subject, who's going to be the next to get married? And so we looked at one of my friends, Jeff. So he's probably going to be the next to get married. And then we looked at him and said, and we thought a bit, no, he's not going to be the next to get married. And then they pointed at me. My name was, the layperson was Peter. So Peter, he'll be the next to get married. And they looked at me and said, no one would marry him. But the scary part was, there was one of the girls that was standing right next to me. And she whispered in my ear, this is honest, truthful. She said, I would. I made sure she was a long distance from me. That really scared me. I don't know why. Anyway, the Ajahn, can you read minds? There was this story of this minister. Did I tell the minister's story? This minister, one of the early kings of Thailand, I think in the Ayutthaya period. And this minister was just such a know-it-all. And he was a very powerful mind, a very sort of helpful minister in the government, but the other ministers didn't like him at all. He was just too smart for them. So they met together without him. How can we get rid of this guy, embarrassing him in front of the Majesty of the King? And they knew he was very proud, so they started to praise him. And the idea was they'd praise him and praise him and praise him until he would say, they were going to say that you are so smart you can probably read our minds. And he'd probably say yes. And once we caught him, and if I say I can read your mind, you can always say, no, that's not what I'm thinking. How can you prove that you can read somebody's minds? So anyway, they set him up in front of the king, and they were saying to him, oh, you're such a wise minister. He said, yeah, I'm very wise. You've helped us so much. Oh, yeah, I've helped you enormously. You know so much. I know everything. You're probably so smart you can even read our minds. Oh, yeah, I can read your minds. He said that in front of the king. He could read people's minds. Okay, they said. What are we thinking right now? they'd all agreed whatever he said, they would say, "No, you're wrong," to embarrass him. "What are you thinking right now?" they said to this. "What are we thinking right now?" they said to this minister. And the minister paused for a moment and said, "Each one of you are thinking kind and loyal thoughts towards His Majesty." They said, "Oh, actually, that's right." So each one of you are thinking benevolent thoughts towards me. Otherwise, get out of here. No, that's actually how it's done. Can you read mine? I've got the last question. "You are a great story. Can you please tell the story of the tadpole that becomes the frog?" I think I've told that here already, haven't I? No, I haven't. Okay. You asked the question, didn't you? Not you. Okay. Anyway, see, I can't read mine. The tadpole and the frog story. This is actually not just a story for fun. This is a story which illustrates just how we understand deep insights which we haven't seen before. So once there was a little tadpole. And the little tadpole, she grew up in a little lake in a retreat center, just like the one we got down there. Have you been down to see the lake down there? There'll be lots of tadpoles down there. So little tadpole, she grew up in a lake. She was a very smart tadpole. She went to school, she went to high school, she majored in chemistry. And when she went to university, she really studied water. She became an expert in hydrology. She was so expert that she became just an authority on it. But how can a tadpole really understand what water is? When she was born in water, lived all her life in water, how could she really know what water was, even though she read all the books and passed all the exams? She could know more about water than the fish knows about water. But then one day, little tadpole, she started to grow arms and legs. It was really weird. She didn't know what was going on, but soon she had arms and legs and she was messing around, and one day she jumped and she was outside the lake, so squatting on dry land. One of the weirdest, strangest experiences she'd ever had in her life. She realized that something was missing. Something which had always been there is no longer there. Water. Only now can Mrs. Frog, not Mrs. Tadpole anymore, Mrs. Frog know what water was, or is. That strange stuff which is now no longer there. Now, the meaning of that story is, do you really understand what your body is? It's always been there for you. You can't know what it is. Your five senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, it's always there for you. How can you know what it is? One day, you grow these wonderful qualities called mindfulness and kindness, just like the light and the warmth of the sun. And one day you're meditating there just as normal, thinking about how long this is going to go on for. It's not working for me, but somebody said I should be here, so here I am, and blah, blah, blah. And then you find yourself outside of the lake. The body has disappeared. Sound is gone, you can't hear anything. You can't feel the body, even the breath has vanished. The five senses have disappeared. You've got these beautiful lights or even jhanas. Wow, this is great. But then something has disappeared. The five senses, the body. Now you know what these five senses are. It's our playground. We think it's really important. We're afraid of letting them go because sometimes that's called death. You haven't died. What's missing is what you learn what it really is. But also that when you have those experiences, it's so pleasant. It's beautiful. And afterwards you realize that another time the five senses will disappear is when you do die. That's what death is. You can't see, you can't hear, smell, taste, touch. Your five senses have turned off. And people are so afraid of that. Why on earth are people afraid of dying? Well, you know what it's like on the other end, after you've died, because you know what deep meditation is. Ah, what a relief. Free from all these senses. So one of the benefits of getting into a deep meditation, you'll never be afraid of dying anymore. Actually, I said that wrong. You're never afraid of death. The process of dying, yeah, of course that can be quite painful and stuff. But you know what's going to happen next. There's a lot of freedom, a sense of happiness, of lightness. Because we don't know what's on the other side of death, that's why we're afraid. Once you know, there's no problem. So, you understand what this body is. That light, the nimittas, I've been talking a lot about that this retreat. And I said also, I guarantee each one of you will experience a nimitta, a beautiful light, sometime. If not when you're alive. When you die, you see the light, you go to the light. What do you think that light is, what people describe? When your death process, five senses are turned off. You see this light in your mind. That's why this meditation retreat is not about, well, it is about all this Buddhism and enlightenment, but it's also like Death 101 class. What it's like and what's going to happen. You can actually experience it, some of you, before you die. Five senses vanishing. See a beautiful light, peaceful and happy. You can recognize it when you do die. So anyway, that's the body disappearing. Once you know what it feels like, you're no longer afraid. Number two, it's not just the body disappears. As you go deeper, jump a bit further as a frog, then you go into these jhanas. Then the body's really gone. And you're very peaceful. The mind is very still. The thing which is disappearing in the jhanas is your will, your choice, the sankhara. That's one of the biggest meanings, core meanings of sankhara, what some people translate as fabrications, conditionings, is your will, according to the Buddha. And because of that, it means, you know what happens when sankharas stop? Sabba sankhara samatha, the quietening of all sankharas. Most people wouldn't understand. The Buddha said that's one of his reasons not to teach. People won't understand that. Sabba sankhara samatha. Because that's like your will disappearing. Totally. What does that feel like? Second jhana. That's the bliss of stillness. That's where the will is gone. It comes back again when you come out afterwards. That's why you're still. There's nothing there to move it. Nothing to disturb it. It's disappeared. People think that's frightening. But when you get into that, you don't say wow at the time, you can't do anything. Perfectly aware, but still. Those powerful states of mind. And afterwards you come out with the insight, you've experienced it. What's it like when your will, what you think is your will, has vanished? Pretty nice. You always think that your will is your friend, protector, allows you to do what you want in this life. The only thing is your will is sometimes stupid and does the wrong things. It wants happiness and just gets more misery. So you just need to train your will to be a bit more smart, more kindness, more wisdom. But then, after a while, you realize what this will truly is. You can actually let it go. It disappears, it vanishes, and then you're still, peaceful. That really is blissful. It actually feels delightful. And that's what happens in second or third or fourth jhanas. As things vanish, you realize what those things really were. You can't know that while they're still around you. You know the word for something which was always there, now vanishes? That word is anicca. Anicca is not impermanence. That's just an English translation which doesn't give full value to the term. Nicca is something which is regular. We have what's called nicca butter for the food we have. Anyone who comes, say every Tuesday, there's the Thai lady, Simone. She's been coming every Tuesday to offer food to the monks since as long as I can remember. So she was there last Tuesday. There's another lady, Doi, comes every Wednesday. She was there today. She's been coming every Wednesday for years. We call that a regular supply of food. Now, people who go to the monastery once a month, the first Monday of the month or something, they go that day. That's regular, that's nicca. That's how the word is used in Vinaya Pitaka. So anicca means something which was always regular, always there, is now vanished. It's gone. That's the real true meaning of anicca. And when things go which aren't supposed to go, they've always been there. Now they're no longer there. That's freaky, but it's true. And you have to accept it, because truth, the realization of truth, requires courage. Whether you like it or don't like it, it's real, it's true. And after a while you find actually it's not scary at all. Freedom at last. The will is not mine. Isn't that wonderful? You don't have to be responsible anymore, do you? Is it my fault I tell bad jokes? Is it my fault I always promise to finish at 8:30 but never do? It's not my fault. It's our fault. You actually control my will as much as I do. And that's very honest. Why do I teach what I teach? Why do I do what I do? It's not just me. I don't instruct you. You really connect. You try to connect with people. That's one of the reasons why that a few times people ask me to please give a very deep talk. And I try, I can't do it. You don't let me. Sometimes you do let me. So it's not my choice. It always is our choice. The audience you're speaking with, sometimes they let you go very deep in your teaching of the Dhamma. Sometimes they don't. I can't do anything about that. Okay, 35, that's enough. Is that okay? Very good, so here we go. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'll try and do it different every time as best I can. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that.